Bao Tran, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So you're back in Seattle right now, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
am. I'm actually based in Seattle. It's just been kind of a wild year, I think, for everyone. But we released our film earlier in the spring, and we've just been kind of nonstop going around promoting screenings all about the country.
Yeah. Well, congratulations, because this is the little film that could and that is doing quite well. You're getting a lot of shout outs about this being one of the best action movies of 2021. And let's talk about how this thing all came together, because it's been a journey, huh?
Well, it's been how many years? 16 years? Is that right?
Something like that. It's all
Yes.
blending. I think the movie can drink now, legally drink and vote. I
So where did the idea for it all come from? Let's step back and talk about that first.
Well, I'm a Pacific Northwest kid, born and raised here. So the story is basically, very much embedded with Seattle and Pacific Northwest and Washington DNA. I grew up here as a second, I guess you would call it first generation Vietnamese American, first of my family to be born here, and kind of grew up multicultural, mixing bowl, as you would say here, and then bicultural household and loving all things that were both Asian and also American, and that kind of included for me martial arts, for sure. And I'm sure you all know Bruce Lee, cast a large shadow over this region since this was like kind of his first digs when he came to America. And so a lot of the martial arts history and a lot of martial arts lineage can tie, or at least say they have a couple degrees of separation with Bruce Lee, and I'm in that as well with my experience growing up doing martial arts. You can get away from the name Bruce Lee. So this is a love letter in a lot of ways to kind of like what the Pacific Northwest is, but also martial arts influence of Bruce Lee in particular, but also just martial arts masters in this region, which tends to get overlooked overall from other cities, say LA or San Francisco or New York. But we have a really rich history of martial arts and also a culture of embracing each other's cultures. And so that's kind of the movie that you kind of see in a nutshell. It's basically, a reflection of our growing up.
Yeah. So, okay, so how did you get into filmmaking, right? I mean, you're a good Asian boy. How come you're not a pharmacist?
Or a doctor?
How do you know I'm not?
Yeah.
How do you know I'm not? I can, tell me your RX. I'll fill out some for you. I can do it. Yeah, well, you try as me right, but we also, have our different agendas. I grew up, yeah, of course, I grew up in a very, how do you say, traditional, maybe more conservative, button down household, nothing to do with entertainment or showbiz. And yet I started falling in love and wanted to get into that world. I blame it on them because, again, like I said, I grew up in this bicultural household, but, at home we'd watch Asian entertainment stuff from our Chinatown video store, mom and pop video store that we'd rent. It would be Hong Kong movies, Asian TV shows that was like dubbed into Vietnamese in terms for us. And if you're Vietnamese, Paris by Night. This is kind of like these big kind of variety shows.
Show. Yeah,
Right,
variety
right.
shows that you grew up, seeing this other almost set of cultural and linguistic references and music and songs and pop songs and all those things. And then you had your top 40 radio, and then you had your multiplexes in the neighborhood, in the mall, where you go see Spielberg and Cameron. So this is like all of my diet, just in the same way that you would eat, rice at home and maybe pizza and hamburgers outside. So that was kind of like this culture in taking in entertainment, and I loved it all. And for some weird reason, I wanted to do it. And I think my biggest inspiration was Jackie Chan. Just watching Jackie Chan, and there was a period of time before he had kind of crossed over. There was maybe just like Jean-Claude Van Damme or Steven Seagal, and nobody knew what Asian superstars were. And that was kind of like our access in a way, for those of us who were able to kind of rent these videos to understand like this is a whole new world of entertainment across the pond. And now we see this obviously with Netflix and Squid Game, and we're in a world where everything is crossing over, and BTS and all that stuff. But
So what was the first film you ever shot?
Oh gosh, film is a very generous word.
Were you in high school? I mean, when you first started actually doing it. I mean, were you in high school, grade school?
I would say maybe middle school. On the cusp, it's kind of like at the age where you kind of like start grabbing your family camcorder and grab your
Yeah,
friends
yeah.
and make some short films and stuff like Super 8. That's kind of like, the Asian. We lived the Asian version of that. We just grabbed and then told stories and wrote scripts and then did call times with our friends and all this. It was just like this very loose time. And at that time, it was kind of the mid 90s. And one of the biggest inspirations for me was Robert Rodriguez. And when he wrote Rebel Without a Crew, which is like when he made El Mariachi, just kind of like blowing up and saying I could do it by myself. And that was kind of like a crazy, empowering moment, but also just taking you down that journey of guerrilla filmmaking.
So how did you? I know some of your lineage, and you actually were rubbed elbows, or were you occupied the same space of a lot of really big time martial arts stars and practitioners. How did you get there from, doing Super 8 movies?
Well, like I said, I mean, martial arts is pretty, it's a subculture. So I think a lot of people kind of know each other, and at least in the American and Canadian martial arts scene, there's this big, community up in Vancouver and big tournament, this Tiger Bomb tournament. So a lot of these kung fu schools, like, are like traveling bands, and they go to different tournaments and they compete and they see each other. So there's a lot of like rapport, and especially with the internet, we started connecting a lot more, and people were making films and putting this stuff online, and we would call each other up and like put each other in our movies, and I'd go down to San Francisco or they'd come up to Seattle and stuff like that. So we connected in that way with a lot of other martial arts filmmakers. And now you kind of see this to this day, like Marvel movies are recruiting all these original YouTube filmmakers to design their action or design all their choreography and stuff like that. So in a lot of ways, this is kind of like the new talent, new bed of new talent, of new, that's coming up.
Now, you did some acting, didn't you, before you got into directing?
Well, again, that's a very loose, there's a very generous word to ascribe that. Well, when you're doing it, you don't have anyone that you could be in the movie, so you have to end up doing it yourself. It was just not like, it was kind of happened by design, and then so it just kind of like happened. And then when you can find a way that you can actually have actors of skill, like I would, realize, being behind the camera is a much better way to be, because you can, kind of control have a little bit more control in dialing in everything. So yeah, I mean, when you start out, it's definitely that one man band, that Rebel Without a Crew, just doing everything yourself. But you start to learn to delegate.
So it was by necessity then,
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
Great. That's good.
So is Paper Tigers your first feature? I mean,
yeah, it's my first feature as a director. Yeah.
Wow. Just wow. I mean, the success you've had off the one movie is tremendous. I mean, it doesn't happen, right? It just doesn't happen like that. So it's a testament to your hard work on it. And I mean, how does that feel? Because it took a long time to get it done, but the fact is you hit it with your first movie. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, I think, it's obviously, like you say, nothing's overnight. So this, people kind of maybe surprised it's the first feature, but, I've been making films for a long time, and I also edited on features. So this is my first as a director, but, I've learned a lot of lessons along the way, and hopefully it all kind of added up to this one moment, and hopefully many more moments as we go on in the rest of the career. But exactly, it's an interesting thing. We've been grinding, and you've seen it, Matt, and we've just been doing our thing, just kind of under the radar. And then when it comes to opportunity, we're able to kind of show what we can do. But we always kind of like kept building, working on a craft. In fact, for this film, The Paper Tigers, we had kind of a reunion of sorts with our cast and crew, or mainly our crew, our DP and our action director and our producers. We had made short films before. They're all from, the Washington State area, from Bremerton, from Seattle, and so on. And they all went to LA, and they all went to like pursue film and go down their career paths. And then we all kind of like made a pact of sorts, saying when we get an opportunity to make a feature film together, we're all going to get the band back together, come to Seattle. You're going to shoot the movie. You're going to design the action. I'm going to direct. And we came back and we made it happen. And then in a lot of ways, it was cool to kind of see all my peers and my friends continue. They didn't just stop. They didn't just wait for the phone to ring. They went and grinded, and they perfected their craft in cinematography and action choreography, and kept doing their thing. And then when the time came, we were all able to make it happen. And so it was kind of a nice reunion of sorts, but also in a way that we didn't kind of like sit on our laurels. We all
Yeah,
hustled
I mean,
and
that's a
grinded
great
for that
story.
moment.
I mean, that's a testament to, like, just coming up together.
Right.
I
And
mean,
coming back home to make something happen here. Now, one of the things that you can say about Paper Tigers is that it was truly a community film because, and it was shot here, shot in the ID, the people that were involved in it, and the people that helped come up with the funding because you crowdsourced it, right?
Yeah, I mean, we had tried. We had tried to go to LA. We pitched it around. We did the water bottle tour, and we got a lot of interest. There was actually a couple offers that were on the table. But as you know, with the story about these three kung fu classmates who have to avenge their master, but they're out of shape. But they're also multicultural. There's two Asian American and one Black American characters, and something that, like I said, back to kind of the Bruce Lee connection that. He had a really diverse group of students that was Black, was Native American, that was Mexican, Filipino, Chinese. He broke the barriers.
Right.
And so we wanted to reflect that in a kung fu family that wasn't all monoculture. And so that was a key point for us. And so when we went to LA and we went to Hollywood, there was a lot of interest and some offers, but they wanted to change the cast to be white. They wanted to change the characters to be more bankable. And mind you, this was before Black Panther or Crazy Rich Asians, so their conversations were a lot more brazen.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know what it is now. I'm sure it's just as brazen. Before it was pretty.
Well, it's just not as obvious.
Not as obvious, yeah.
Who did they bring? Who did they bring up to play some of the characters? Did they mention any names, any actors, white actors that we would know?
I mean, they would just whip names out like Nicolas Cage or Bruce Willis it's just like all these names that were in that could get the movie funded. And in other words, it's kind of a backwards way of thinking. In other words, they say, well, we can't have a movie if it doesn't have a movie star that leads the poster, right? But how do we have movie stars if we don't cast new talent and new faces? Otherwise, you're just dredging up the same talent over and over. And so it's just kind of this vicious cycle that the industry is in, and obviously operates on fear a lot. Yeah. But I digress. But anyways, we went back to Seattle and said, we're just going to do it our own way, because we just didn't think going through the typical Hollywood mill was the right choice. And so we had to go up and pitch locally to our community, Asian American community, doctors, dentists, lawyers, real estate agents. It's just any people who had some type of means, let's put it that way. And we were able to kind of like get involved and be interested in what we were doing. And it was all piecemeal, like that, this wasn't a startup with an angel or one whale, right? It was just everybody pitching in. And so it took a while to kind of get, introductions here, introductions there. One person chipped in, the other person chipped in, and eventually kind of all added up so that we could have the green light. But exactly that was, story of our lives.
Yeah. People don't get it, that whole process of trying to get funding is probably 90% of the time. It only took 10% of the time to actually do the film. I mean, if you look at the entirety of it. So that's crazy that people just think like, oh, you just go do it. And you just don't, One of the things that interests me is now that you're the guy, right? I mean, you are. I mean, people talk about you. Because I remember years ago, I tried to help you to get representation, and no one would bite. I mean, I called my agent at CAA, and they kind of, yeah, whatever. So what are people saying now? Are people coming to you and wanting to represent you and be part of your whole kind of story?
Are they taking your calls? Let's put it that way.
Yes, yeah. That's
exactly. The calls going in versus going out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we're building on that. Yeah, I mean, I was fortunately able to kind of have representation since the release of the film, and we've been having a lot of meetings and starting to figure out, what's the next project and figure out all those things. Definitely, the door's open. I think the nature of the beast is that you have to kind of show something that you've done something for people to know what they can do. If you pitch some idea, crazy kung fu movie, it takes a lot of imagination until you actually see the theme and it's executed. And it's funny because the industry is always like, well, this is pretty what would you say, high concept, or this one's like execution dependent. Well, everything's execution dependent.
Yeah, exactly.
Like nobody knows like if something's nothing's a short shot. But I think the industry likes to think there are certain things that they can bank on, some things that they can't. But the reality is you have to kind of like show it. You have to tell the story. You have to find the means to do it. And unfortunately, that's kind of the way for a lot of young and new talent who have to kind of like grind through. And hopefully, for me, I can kind of pay it forward and make it a little bit easier for anyone trying to, make that first feature or make that first movie and not make the same mistakes that we made. Over 10 years is a lot of time, and it's also a lot of time to make mistakes and a lot of time to learn from it and adjust and pivot.
So this put that you got, for to do an episodic for the networks.
Yeah, for CBS, right?
CBS, right?
CBS, yeah.
That's a pretty big deal. I mean, so
yeah.
What do you know what you're going to be doing?
We don't know yet. So the Viacom CBS Viacom is, I guess, the big conglomerate owner of CBS. So that also includes Paramount, that includes Nickelodeon, and a lot of like the whole CBS family is quite big. But this is part of the directing lab that they've do annually. Due to COVID, they kind of had to do a pause, I think, the previous year. But this is the first year that they're kind of back on, but also full steam, in which they're guaranteeing the directors to direct an episode. So it's a way to kind of like, again, open those doors to get, underrepresented directors. And by that I mean, people of color, directors of color, or minor, gender or et cetera. So in other words, have to direct a TV episode, which for folks who don't know, like TV and film are kind of different worlds. They kind of like work on different pods. Yeah, so it's very hard to cross over if we're doing film. Like for me, I've been in film, all my life essentially, and then like the foray into TV, it's kind of there's a lot of stuff to kind of like jump through. So this is a way to kind of accelerate the process. So Viacom CBS is basically kind of a lab and incubator, and just try to get us in front of as many showrunners and as many exec producers, in the TV world, so that we can get to directing the episode. We don't know yet. I think it's just going to be conversation of which show kind of makes the most sense for
which show do you want to? Which show would you, if you had your wish list? What's the top show that you'd like to direct?
There's a lot of great shows. Yeah, I mean, like on CBS, there's a lot of like Magnum PI or NCIS Hawaii. On the Paramount side, Star Trek. I was a big fan growing up watching Star Trek.
Yeah, that would be awesome, right?
They're doing a lot of fun stuff on Star Trek as well. So yeah, there's a whole, like I said, there's like, you can run the gamut of all these different opportunities that can happen.
Does it matter to you if it's a drama or a comedy, or since actually Paper Tigers was a little bit of both? It gives a mix of all of that.
Yeah, that's why I'm a bit of a mixed bag, because I really love drama and I love comedy, and I as you see the film, it kind of tries to blend all those different things. So I can lean in either way. Maybe that's kind of the ability, and maybe that's kind of like when I worked as an editor, you kind of learn to cut so many different styles. You kind of like, you can start picking up all these different I guess genres and skill sets. So for me, I can kind of jump in any which way, as long as the writing's great. Obviously we can't do magic if the writing's not great. So if the writing's great, then we're off to the races.
Paper Tigers opened that door. True.
In a lot of ways, yeah. I mean, like to Matt's point, again, it's like you're nobody until you have something. So
right, yeah.
I mean, it's such a catch-22. It's especially for people of color, right? Yeah. Because there is always a skepticism, because usually they approach you like, yeah, we better get an Asian director because we got to show. I mean, and it's true. Those are the discussions. I've been in the room, and. For you to overcome that, or for any person of color to overcome that, for them to see your true craft, is really not that easy. I mean, I've been in enough of those pitch rooms and stuff in my life to know that it's brutal. They're always nice to your face, but you know exactly what's going on, right? You do.
That's corporate America, isn't it? It's just that,
corporate America.
Yeah, it is. It is what it is. And, until people of color really are the ones that are at the top there to change the way of thinking. But it's all about the money, and it's all about just, what they think will work. So I would think that you got to feel pretty good that you can just say, hey, look at what I did here. Neener,
Yeah, look at Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, hey, you mofo, look at this. Yeah, right. So that's got to feel pretty good.
The gloat factor's got to be massive.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the stories remain to be seen. But I think a lot of things is also finding the next opportunity, because if you do something that's new and challenging, still, again, the industry is very much based on habits and creatures of habit, and if something's new or different, that's great. But like, you almost have to prove it again and again and again.
Right.
And maybe that's the nature of the beast. But I think for us, given our 10 years of just hunkering down and being heads down and just doing our thing, like this is kind of a thing that I've always felt for myself. I've never felt the imposter syndrome. I know it's very common sentiment, among people of color, especially because, these white spaces that kind of create what success or accomplishment and achievement look like. And when our resumes don't line up to that, we feel a little inadequate, right? And so then when they open the door, you kind of feel like, oh, should I be here? And, that's the imposter syndrome. I never felt that. I just felt like either open this door, I'm going to find a window, or I'm just going to build my own house. Like the Tyler Perry model is like, if they don't worry about the gatekeepers, build your own gate, build your own house. And so that's what kind of entrepreneurship of this, grinding and raising basically a startup, which is what a film, I think gave us a lot of agency and gave us a lot of, maybe independent confidence.
Yeah.
So, these doors open and, these happen, and we're going to have rejection as we go. I mean, that's part of the game as well. So I think that's just like, it's just hardened us and toughened us, and also weighing it so that we don't put our value and worth in these, rejections or even acceptances, right? You just kind of learn how to ride the line a bit, be confident in what you're doing.
I keep hearing you say we. Who's we?
It's the royal we. Well, I speak it collectively, my team and we all kind of grinded, and they're working on some cool projects now. So, I mean, it's just kind of like, we're just using the springboard for all of us to be able to kind of like build on what we have, not just as director, but also producers, as DP, as an action director, and so on. And so, yeah, I've just always felt like, we're all in this together from day one, and we're excited to see what each of us can do, including me. So I'll use the singular there.
Well, it's true though, because you got your crew. I mean, you can't do it by yourself. It's just impossible, even though that's the mythology of it, because these guys have your back. I mean, it's like being in a real tight situation, right? Where you need your buddies, that you need your friends to be there for you. And the fact that you can work together and get something done like Paper Tigers is really a testament to all of you guys. Yeah. I mean, sticking with it, just holding the vision and getting it done and getting it across the finish line. I mean, that is the big deal, is getting the project across the finish line. And what happens afterwards is that's the fruits of the labor.
Yeah. Well, it's your posse. That is their posse.
Yeah, it's the posse's on Broadway. Yeah. I mean, it's like, that's the thing. It's like we, it's a miracle any movie gets made, like, period, whether it's good or bad. If you can like cross that finish line, that's a miracle. And for it to be, received so positively, and people start to talk about it and love it. And that's like, wow, this is kind of a different level for sure. And that's actually kind of like encourages us to do better and want to do better, and so on. But yeah, I mean, the crew is like our day one crew, but also, it's a way of also acknowledging that, this film or filmmaking is very collaborative. And like you say, there's the mythos of it. And of course, when you take meetings, like you got to tout yourself, what you did. But the truth is, you couldn't have done it without this amazing crew that was behind you, and that we worked together. So, and we were in the trenches together. And I think that's kind of a hard thing for people to kind of understand. Maybe money people have a little more different, like, well, who do I write my check to? Is you or you? It's a little bit like not as specific. People just want to pin that medal on that one person, but it's not.
Did you have somebody locally that you could look to kind of just help you during the times of the making of the film, and someone maybe that had some experience in doing all of this, that you could, okay, how do I deal with this, or what do you think? Giving you feedback and helping you out during those times when you're thinking like, God, what have I taken on?
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of sounding boards. Something to be said about filmmaker collectives that were very supportive and helpful for each other, and especially here, we have kind of a very strong women filmmaker contingent. So we all kind of know what it is like to be a little bit overlooked and underused, in that sense. So we have great filmmakers, Sue Corcoran, Megan Griffiths. And so a lot of these filmmakers that, I reached out to kind of chat, like, what'd you guys do when you did this film, and how did you proceed? And just kind of like a lot of picking of brains, but also every path is different. And it's also a way to kind of realize what you can do to, another film, and you have to start to discover that. And so, that's the interesting part. It was when you have to start to synthesize, you can get advice, till the cows come home. But, right. How do you actually figure out your own path and figure out, what makes the most sense for what you're doing?
Yeah. One of the things that you had to do that no one else had experience with is launching your film during COVID.
Yeah.
And launching it online. Because I remember watching it online. I thought, this is a great film. I mean, I really enjoyed it. But when I actually had a chance to watch it in a theater, my mind was blown.
Oh, yeah.
The difference in the experience was just stunning to me, especially the audio track. So if people have only seen this online or, on their TVs, go to a theater because it's a way different experience.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's to me, like, that's been the biggest trip. And I think if anything, it's kind of like given us more confidence. Before we always had, I think it was at Robert Town, who's like, knows anything, that's kind of the adage in Hollywood and maybe corporate America or life in general. Nobody knows anything. Everybody has like best practices and good advice and so on and so on. When COVID hit, like you said, Matt, like all bets were off. Like nobody had a clue. Like, and then you start to realize everybody's just like, everybody's just like floating and getting by just the same. So launching a film, let me rewind back, not just releasing a film, but launching sales for a film, to not have the film festival experience, like you said, like to be able to see it in the theater experience with, the theater speakers and the big screen and with a crowd that's reacting. That's huge. And, for a lot of independent films previous to this, we're able to kind of make big sales or big splashy, landings at Sundance, at Toronto, Midnight Madness, and so on. So all these famous festivals, kind of launch a lot of these films through that theater going audience experience and getting all the buyers and all the salespeople in the same room and seeing that hype and seeing that excitement. You can't replace that. And so when we had to go to do our film festival premiere, it was at a Fantasia, which we love them. They did their best, but it was a virtual festival. And so we had to actually launch sales through Vimeo screeners, through online links to sales and distributors. And so God knows how they were watching it, on their cell phone or on their laptop, and kids running by in their room, in their living room or whatever. It's like we don't know how people are going to receive that, and that is a very different experience.
Well,
for you to watch it.
It's crazy because like I work in television, right? So there's never an audience. You just imagine some guy 2 6-packs in, just kind of sitting on his couch drooling, right?
Yeah. That's Matt.
Don't have to imagine
That's Matt.
That was
yeah.
But I remember seeing
just
something.
Peer into Matt's room.
I remember seeing something I did on a big screen with an audience, and it was shocking to me. So, what was it like the first time you were able to watch your film just discreetly, where you had a big audience watching? What was the feeling you had? I mean, because you'd been watching it on a monitor too, editing this thing forever.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, we had to expand. Yeah. So this is interesting because it came in drip. We didn't get this one like aha spiritual moment. So the first, I would say, the crowd experience that we had was actually at the Seattle Asian American Film Festival, where they had a drive-in screening.
Oh, that's right.
And so that we had a great one down at Burien. But that was the first time. So imagine 4 or 5 months of screening this virtually. And so, we have all these Zoom Q&As. But this is the first time we had a cool in-person event.
Yeah, but that's a bunch of homers there, right? I mean,
bunch of homers, yes, but
audience though.
Right. But let me get to that. Yeah. So we got in little bits and pieces, and we're almost like addicts in that sense. Our producer Alan Doang, was literally walking through cars, between cars, eavesdropping in each window, just kind of hear the laughter and just kind of like, and he was just trying to take it all in, because that was like our own experience to be able to see, or hear. And so homers, yes. And then we had a release that was actually in theaters. We had several premiere screenings that we hosted. And so then you kind of got that experience. And then you got the experience where we started sneaking into theaters and then kind of watching it. And so you kind of get this whole gamut of thing. And keep in mind, the reaction was great, or at least we could tell it was great, but also people had masks on. Yeah. And so when people are laughing, it's actually muffled, or people reacting, it's actually muffled. And so we're like, kind of like, for the first couple of times, we're like, anything? And then we start to realize, like, they have their masks up, but the body language is like, they're just like rocking in their chairs, or they're moving and stuff like that. And then you start to realize, okay, it's landing. And so it's like, you get again, we didn't get that one experience, that one snapshot of like, this is the movie experience. Like, we just kind of got clues of this and that, and kind of at least try to put it all together.
One of the people that was involved in the movie also had a bit part in it. It was Yuji Okamoto, who we featured on. He's been with us on a
Yes.
podcast. Great guy, and talk about a background in that. How did it, was he a producer on this?
Yes.
Yeah. So
He was one of the main producers. We had 4 producers on the film. Yuji, I worked with Yuji on several short films previous to this. As you know, he has a restaurant, Kona Kitchen, so he's
Right.
a neighborhood staple and definitely a personality about town.
Right.
And so had an opportunity to make a couple films together, and we liked our collaborations. And I started talking about this film that I wanted to get off the ground, and he was really excited about it because he also wanted to kind of like work on producing and transition to that. And so this was kind of like, little do you know, it took 4, 5, 6 years on top of that, but here we are. But again, Yuji was a beast. Again, like a lot in actuality, all the community relations really kind of came through Yuji because we could ask favors, and if people around town, the CID or the JA community knew the ask came from Yuji,
Yeah,
it was
exactly,
like done
right?
deal.
That he opened the door.
So it's like open door completely. So Yuji was able to kind of like move and shake for us on that sense, and also on the other sense of just getting the actors and coordinating with the actors and just making sure everybody was okay, because it's like a low budget film and this is not a far cry from a Hollywood production, and so when we have to cast actors, we had to make sure it was kind of on the level with us, and also we're on the level with them about this. You don't have stunt doubles. We're just gonna work you, and everybody's gonna do their own stunts and do the action, but also acting, and and we'll try to take care of you best we can. But we're not a 5-star production. It is what it is. Take it or leave it. And so, we were able to have those conversations, especially with Yuji, and able to kind of like, work it on the actor side and just kind of make sure their needs and whatever they were feeling were taken care of. And so that was kind of like a whole liaisoning. Again, producer like wears many hats, and Yuji was indispensable in that sense.
So did he make sure you had your Asians so they had good craft services? So you
Yeah.
guys ate well, right?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Yeah, he
sounds
was
good.
key on that. He was Kona was also covered a couple days for catering, but also any other vendors. He was very, very, very fickle about finding the right menu and finding the right meals for everybody. So that's great.
Happy crew.
There you go.
Exactly.
So, what is there anything that you just really want to do, or a film that you really want to make? Have you thought about that?
Wow. I mean, I have a lot of projects I'm just kind of sifting through and trying to figure out how to write a script, and then start to figure out, all the ideas together. But, I just want to continue along this path and hopefully, an independent, or at least have some type of voice at this point. Taika Waititi's career, I think, is really inspiring and interesting. He makes really diverse films that are also from his point of view, so I think that's kind of like as good a goal as any, to just be able to continue on as a filmmaker and tell stories from your point of view and do it in a way that's entertaining and fun, and also hopefully in a way that kind of gets a little bigger and bigger,
Yeah.
So hopefully we don't have to take another 10 years to make, and I have to rattle the tin cup so much, but also just hopefully people are a little more interested about getting involved earlier on.
So it's award season. Did you guys get any nods on anything? You could be walking the red carpet.
If there is a red carpet.
The virtual red carpet. I think it's up for, it might be depending on a committee, but I know it was submitted for the DGA, which is Director Guild of America.
Nice.
First feature. So I think it's the first feature category. So I think we're out for that. I don't know. I think nominations are announced. I think end of the month. And so we'll see. Yeah, maybe a virtual red carpet. You know what? The award is the hearts of audience and fans around the world. I think that's the important thing. That's a red carpet I can bank on.
Actually, I've been on one red carpet, and I was walking the red carpet with my wife, and everybody's looking. It's like, who the hell are they? Except for one Chinese photographer comes up and starts taking our picture, and I go like, yeah, brother. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, bro. Thanks.
Hey, the award really is the fact that you got it made.
Yes.
And that people got to see it and enjoy it. It's really entertaining. And congratulations.
It's still on Netflix for a while, right? What's the
It's
window
on
on
Netflix. It's on Blu-ray. It's on iTunes and Amazon. I think on Netflix for maybe another 12 months, I believe. Yeah, so I think it's going to be a shorter term. But then after that, hopefully we'll make some more deals figure out. But for sure, in this reality, in this day and age, you don't own it until you have the disc. So make sure you get a Blu-ray or a DVD.
There you go.
Features of deleted scenes and all those things. But back to
special
what you were
director
saying,
commentary.
Yeah.
We're working on that. Yeah, I think hopefully maybe in the next edition or something like that. But it's an interesting thing for us to be able to. It's all joking aside. It really is the reward, is having it made, but also having an audience take to it. Because I think the bittersweetness part of this is obviously with COVID and all those things. When we were shooting our final scenes, our pickup scenes, actually, it was in the CID, and that was in the last days before the lockdown of 2020, right? And so it was kind of eerie, to be honest, when we were out walking the streets in CID and getting these shots, and the streets were completely empty, and walls, restaurants were boarded up and stuff like that. And it was a far cry from 6 months earlier, where we were shooting in CID and everybody was out and they were smiling, it was sunny, and so we kind of got the whole flavor and the breadth of life in that experience. But for us to be able to have a movie that's released in pandemic, I think one of the most rewarding feedback is that it's a perfect movie for pandemic. And by that people were just people were sad, and people were wanting to get out and experience life and get back to the way things were, and to have something to watch, a movie that puts a smile on their face and a little bit of happiness for that brief moment. I think it's in itself its own reward, definitely.
Right. And in a time when Asian Americans have become targets for a lot of BS, I think this is a really important thing, not only from the entertaining standpoint, but what you're accomplishing. It's inspiring. And, just the fact that, you have been willing to just put your whole life on the line to do this, that's pretty darn good. So congratulations on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Way to go, Bao.
Yeah. Way to go, Bao.
Thank you, sirs.
All right. Bao Tran, thank you so much for joining us. This has been great. And we'll talk again when you make your next movie. You better come back. All right.
Yeah. For sure.
Star Trek. I'm on board with Star Trek.
All right. Thanks, Bao.
Thank you.